I think it's a damn catastrophe that people are being misled on this issue.
I'm Martha Bonetta. I'm a family farmer in Virginia, and we are so thrilled that you are all here. We all have heard the threat loud and clear, right? And we all know what that is. That if we question, disagree, or challenge, what happens? Retribution. And we all know what that's called, right? That's called tyranny. And we should have the freedom to question. Our First Amendment rights are critical to us all. And I am so proud of the individuals in this film that carried the torch and did question and did challenge. And they've all faced retribution. Many of them have lost their jobs. Their credibility has been attacked. And we need to lift them up and celebrate. A house built on lies is nothing but what? A house of cards, right? And a house of cards, you would think, would be easy to blow down. But it takes people like yourselves, like all of us, to ask the questions, to challenge, to disagree, to tear that house down. And we are so fortunate to have this amazing panel with us. So what I'd like to do is start with Mr. Rogers, Chris Rogers, the producer and director of Climate Hustle. Again, climatehustle.com. Why did you produce the film? And why was it important to you?
It's an important film because it reveals truth. It reveals both sides of the issue and what's really going on. We're able to get on Drug Report. We had like 200 news hits from Time, Variety Magazine, USA Today. We're on CBS, we're on CNN, we're on Drug Report like 4 or 5, 6 times. And so we're just kind of everywhere. And then on the social media side, we started releasing Facebook ads, and some of those got up to 500,000 responses. So we're really happy to get the truth out, and people have been responding.
James Taylor, one of the aspects of Climate Hustle is how it exposes some of the ridiculous claims that are attributed to climate change, right? I mean, everything from cannibalism to prostitution to, my goodness, we won't even be able to have a cup of coffee anymore. So why is it that the campaigners feel the need to blame every malady in life?
The reason they do this is because their scientific predictions have all failed. When the predictions are made about more frequent and severe tornadoes, more frequent and severe droughts, etc., people understand that if you are repeatedly wrong about something, your credibility disappears. So what they have to do now is take, first of all, every anecdotal occurrence. So last night in the mock trial on global warming, you may have heard one of my opponents there mention the California wildfires. What he didn't mention is that it's a statistical fact that wildfires throughout the United States have become less frequent and less severe over the span of the last several decades. But the Earth is a large place with a dynamic climate. There are going to be wildfires. There always have been. There always will be. There are going to be tornadoes and hurricanes. There always have been. There always will be. So you can pick out that anecdote. And then when they spin their narrative, when you get to the silly stuff, such as rape, incest, wife beatings, prostitution, you name it, it is a cry of desperation. When you've run out of seemingly credible arguments that you can make, the last resort that you have is to appeal to people's emotions and be as outlandish as possible, because otherwise people will stop listening because they've already recognized that what you said before fails, and they're running out of options.
Yaron Brook, the UN has said that centralized transformation that is going to make the life of everyone on the planet very different, and that is what she has declared and what she is seeking. Do we Americans want to see UN bureaucrats make the life of everyone on the planet very different?
Well, I don't want to see UN bureaucrats, period. I never understood why anybody valued anything produced by that body. Where on the Human Rights Commission, you have Cuba and Syria and countries like that. I mean, why anybody would take anything produced by the UN seriously about anything is beyond. There's something going on here, right? Because these people know, or at least some of them, know that they're lying. They know that this is a massive deception. And the question is, what are they after? What's really going on here? And I think that a lot of the stuff coming out of the UN reveals this. What they really want is the destruction of capitalism. What they really want is the destruction of industrialization. You heard a few quotes, I guess, from the next movie, where they're even suggesting this. There is a nihilism that's driving, at least the intellectuals behind this, a certain hatred human prosperity, for human success. And it's very hard for us to understand. Some kids like to build towers, and other kids like to knock them down. These are the kids who like to knock them down. These are the bullies. They want to knock down progress. What wasn't mentioned in the documentary was that just before global cooling, we were all going to die of overpopulation, right?
When we report the good news, when we report that there's a tremendous greening of the Earth that's occurring right now, we've measured it objectively from satellites in space. When we see longer growing seasons, fewer frost events, more soil moisture, all this has been scientifically documented. And when we mention this to people, this is the only topic I can think of where by presenting good news, uplifting wonderful stories that should make us smile and make our hearts warm, we're accused of being denialist, haters, evil people, the worst possible people in the world who should have pillows put over our heads in the sleep and snuffed out. It's just, it's incredible.
As the film revealed, the 97% consensus claims, they are repeated all over the world in the media and by leaders and politicians.
Senator, 97% of the scientists concur and agree that there is global warming and anthropogenic impact with regards to global warming. The problem with that statistic that gets cited a lot is it's based on one bogus study. I asked about the science and the evidence, the actual data. We have satellites. They're measuring temperature. That should be relevant, and your answer was, pay no attention to your lying eyes and the numbers that the satellites show. Instead, listen to the scientists who are receiving massive grants who tell us, do not debate the science.
Why is that talking point so used so often all over the world?
I am so glad you asked that question. You have only a couple of surveys, and Mark Moreno in the movie took them apart quite well, in which scientists are asked about global warming. It's just a few scientists. What Mark didn't point out is that the scientists are overwhelmingly government employee scientists, so they have a financial self-interest in keeping their money flowing, etc. So this 97% consensus centers around two meaningless questions. Has the climate warmed? Yes. Have humans played some role? Yes. Anybody who cites this as evidence, as proof that all the world scientists disagree with skeptics such as myself, either are ignorant about what the questions asked were or deliberately manipulating that survey in order to mislead you about what scientists truly believe.
Thank you so much. Yara, so what do you think will be the impact of the UN and EPA climate regulations on the average American?
Well, if they're taken seriously and they're actually implemented, the result is ultimately a significant decline in the standard of living of Americans. There is no alternative. There is no alternative to fossil fuels today, and the only alternative that one could imagine is nuclear, and that's off the table for. I still don't know exactly why, but it's off the table. Mostly because of costs, but those costs are primarily driven up by regulation. Look, without fossil fuel is everywhere. You can't imagine, there's not a product in this room that fossil fuel has not been involved in either literally creating it or in the process of creating it. You can't survive without fossil fuel in the modern world. So massive declines in standard of living if these proposals are taken seriously. I don't think they will. I think most people value their lives too much. This is the pushback is from really brave, courageous scientists who are willing to challenge it's not so much the majority, but the people with power. And therefore, the people who get you published, the people who get you jobs, the people like that who are really attacking the scientists who are willing to be skeptical.
ExxonMobil has recently been challenged with a legal challenge, which is to force them to turn over their data on the research that they've done on climate change. How do you feel about that? Is that going to be addressed in your next film?
Yeah, I mean, we need to deal with that. It's really a war on free speech. If they can get away with this one on this area, what are they going to get away with next? That's the concern.
It is such a dangerous assault on free speech. But here's something in terms of the tactics and the politics where we're pushing back and I think winning. okay, you have some attorneys general from blue states who are utilizing this theory that Exxon committed fraud by funding groups that are misleading the science, therefore we can get to the speech itself. But guess what? Maybe the Electoral College has been leaning blue in recent years, but numerically, the number of states in this country, there are more red states than there are blue states. There are more attorneys general who would be on our side of the topic than there are attorneys general who would like to prosecute skeptics. And the fact of the matter is the renewable power industry heavily funds groups such as the Center for American Progress, whose own scholars, such as Joseph Rome, write articles making all sorts of assertions that I would love to, if we must go down this road, which we shouldn't, but if we do, I would love to be able to point out all of the over-the-top misrepresentations and instances of fraud that are being perpetrated on the American people. And what they realize now is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. There are double-edged swords in play, and this is something I think we've made a good point of pointing out. We're getting them back on their heels a little bit.
Let me just say, this is an unbelievably dangerous road we're heading on. If the government, the entity of coercion, the entity of force, gets to decide what true science is and what's not true science, when you now are getting prosecuted for advocating for not true science under the guise of fraud, which is by any legal standard is complete BS, that lawyers, attorney generals, would use this tactic is just unbelievable in a land with the First Amendment. That is the Inquisition. That is Galileo.
The sentence of the Inquisition on Galileo, this holy tribunal being desirous of providing against the disorder and mischief which was thence proceeding and increasing to the detriment of the holy faith. The two propositions of the stability of the sun and motion of the earth were qualified by the theological qualifiers as follows. First, the proposition that the sun is in the center of the world and immovable from its place is absurd, philosophically false, and formally heretical, because it is expressly contrary to the Holy Scripture. The proposition that the earth is not the center of the world, nor immovable, but that it moves and also with a diurnal motion, is also absurd, philosophically false, and, theologically considered, at least erroneous in faith. You were commanded by the acting commissary of the Holy Office, before a notary and witnesses, to relinquish altogether the said false opinion, and in future neither to defend nor teach it in any manner, neither verbally nor in writing.
This attack by the Attorney General is one of the worst things to happen in America in memory. It is a real disaster. If they can get away with this, government power is unlimited and controls everything.
And the fact of the matter is, if you believe in big government, if you believe in these elites that are going to control and dictate the terms and conditions of our lives, but if you believe in individual freedom, if you believe in limited government, you hear, we are destroying the world. Well, if we're destroying the world, well, then absolutely we have to do something. And if we truly were destroying the world, as much as I love freedom, then I guess maybe we'd have to give some of that up. When this topic first came up, I also believed in the global warming crisis. I got into the issue because, as somebody who had taken atmospheric science courses, a number of them at an Ivy League institution, when I heard about this coming up, I wanted to do the research, and I wanted to present to my fellow students in law school what was happening. And the more I read the actual data and the studies and the facts, I was blown away by how the evidence pointed in the other direction. As conservatives, as libertarians, we look under the hood to make sure that the asserted justifications for taking liberty and freedoms away from us and giving it to government are justified. That's why it's become a liberal conservative issue, and what we find is that the scientific evidence points in just the opposite direction. There have been a few surveys published by the Institute of Coastal Research based in Germany, Bray and von Storch. They are IPCC scientists. They're not people on my side of the topic. It's not cherry picks. They've surveyed approximately 500 of atmospheric climate scientists around the world. So these aren't biologists or whatever. These are closely related to the climate field. The most central question, and there are quite a few on this, and I've published a summary of their findings at the Heartland Institute, and we've linked to the entire study, so you don't have to take our word for it. So you can find it there. But the most central question to me was, does the science justify turning the issue over to policymakers for solutions? Less than half of these 500 atmospheric scientists from around the world said, yes, the science justifies turning it over to policymakers. That, to me, is the most important question. And that's something that Michael Shermer conveniently forgot to mention.
You know, people, once they adopt a religion, facts don't matter anymore. They're gonna keep with the dogma. They're gonna keep the rant. I think the documentary already shows that it has all the characteristics of faith rather than science. This is becoming, a really central issue for, I think, Western civilization and what it means to be free. I think this attack on free speech, the attack on science, core science, this is where kind of the rubber is hitting the road on our one of the very few issues where the question of liberty is going to be fought out. A lot of these issues, they become big, they become prevalent. You get the 97% because the good people are silent. And people think they can just get away with saying 97%, and nobody ever challenges it. It's enough just to stand up and say, I disagree, or no, that statistic is misleading. But speak up, speak up, speak up. That's the only tool we have to really turn this around.
Every time that you show up at FreedomFest, every time that you show up at your local grassroots meetings, every time you write a letter to the editor, every time you write your legislator, these events have real-world impacts. Don't let the statists convince you that you don't make a difference. When you show up at meetings like this, you make a tremendous difference, and we are starting to see that tangibly. Chris
Rogers, our director and producer, what is next in the future for distribution?
We're definitely working on a sequel. We've actually done cut one of the sequels. DVD's coming out in August, so you can order it at www.climatehustle.com. And now you guys can be the heroes. You can go to climatehustle.com. There's all kinds of materials up there. Now it's up to you. It's up to you to get this message out there. If we don't act, this will totally hurt us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panelists a huge round of applause.